Good evening. So I want to talk about the story of how I got started in business. And it actually started when I was about 6 years old, 7 years old. We were living in Bombay, in India, and my mom, who was a housewife, was jarring pickles. She gave me a basket full of these pickles and said, "Go sell." And it was really awkward at first, but my older sister and I, we went out there and knocked on doors and said, "Hey, does anybody want some pickle?" Because they were very time-consuming to make, and the other housewives were like, "Sure." So as the demand for that grew, and more people started asking us to bring the pickles, I realized that that something that you create at home could have actually led to a business for my mom, and she did that successfully for a very long time. So my parents are risk takers. I grew up with a dad who went off to college and had a great career in India, but growing up, they didn't have electricity or running water in their home. So he often studied by the lamppost on the street. And my mom, who became an orphan at the age of 3, again, studied and grew up and married my dad and had kids and a wonderful pickle business. So I think one of the biggest risks my parents took was taking 5 kids when they were in their 40s, moving to the United States without a job, no money, and starting fresh in a new country. And I still remember when we first came over, it was one of the coldest, stormiest nights I think ever known to mankind, at least to me, because I'd never seen snow before. The first place we landed was Schenectady, which back then was kind of going downhill, and not much was going on there. When I was in college, I was trying to figure out not just life as a student in America, life as an immigrant student in America, and at the same time, at the age of 17, I'm trying to figure out what I'm supposed to be when I grow up. But I also was born in India, where we're told if you're not a doctor and engineer, really, what are you doing? So I knew that I had to do something related to either the sciences or the business, and I kept changing my major in college. I changed it 3 different times, and then finally dropped out because I got an opportunity to move and work in a technology company in New York City. So at the age of 20, I moved to New York City, and it was the greatest thing that ever could happen. I had all the freedom in the world, and I had a great social life, and had a fantastic job that paid me well. And I did that well for nearly 10 years. I ended up working in publishing and printing for a good 10 years, thinking I'm happy, but also realizing that I was restless. I didn't know that this is what I wanted to do and continue doing. Probably nobody hates Mondays more than me and Tom Sawyer, right? So I figured, what can I do in order to not work on a Monday? And I realized the only way to do this is probably to be my own boss. So I started lots and lots of failed businesses. I had a lunch delivery business in the city. I became a freelance graphic designer, but I quickly realized that that still made me have a boss, so I didn't like that. I also applied for a street vendor permit and became a street fair vendor, much to the dismay of my parents. They were looking for a doctor and engineer. But for years, I did this. I worked a 9-to-5 job in the city, and I packed up a rented minivan that I found a guy on Craigslist who had a rented minivan. He'd come pick me up from my apartment. We'd go set up a tent at these street fairs and sell stuff. And I did this for years, thinking I was slowly going to rack up enough money so I could open my business. But it just never happened. No matter how many street fairs I did, no matter how many weekends I did this, it just was not happening. So I was really frustrated. And during a routine visit to my doctor, I like to keep myself healthy, he said to me, I've heard a lot about cities in upstate New York making a resurgence and having this whole revitalization moment, and this is in the early 2000s. I did, the craziest thing that my parents didn't want me to do, which is during the recession of 2008, quit my job, moved back to Schenectady, and opened an import shop selling stuff that nobody needs. During the recession, people are not necessarily thinking, I need to buy myself a carved elephant. They're thinking, I'm going to save this money for my rent, right? So I'm selling products in the store, which I was getting from India and Morocco and Pakistan, and although it did really well in my street fairs, it wasn't quite moving in the store in a city where it was still trying to come back. And you're probably also wondering why Pakistan and Morocco. That's because the year before I quit my really lucrative job in the city and moved back home to open this import shop nobody wanted, I went to Morocco and married a stranger who's not from Morocco. He's originally from Pakistan. We got married, I come back, and he came back with me, and so we was living in Schenectady with the store, and because people were not coming through the doors, we decided we're going to take a product out. So we started looking at other street markets and farmers markets and started packing up our stuff and just going out there to get the product to the people. And during this time, as Schenectady is going through this amazing renaissance, the Schenectady Green Market opened, which was a resounding success, and it's now been 10 years and is still a wonderful, successful market. So we went to them, applied, and were told, well, you can't really sell your stuff here because it's all imported. You have to produce locally, and you have to produce within a 100-mile radius of Proctor's, which is in downtown Schenectady. And it was devastating, right? But they also told me they were looking for food vendors because they didn't have a lot of food vendors at the market. And I said, listen, I've done street fairs in the city. I've run a lunch service business. I've done all these crazy things, and I'm sure I could figure out food. So they said, all right, when you figure that out, come back. Turns out serving food is not that easy. It took me a good 6 to 8 months to figure out how to get a food license and sell food at a market. But eventually, in 2009, my husband and I were able to join the farmers market and have a booth selling. Of course, we started out with Indian food because that's what I know. And as we're selling Indian food, we're eating Moroccan food at home, and Muntasim said, why aren't we doing Moroccan at the market? And I said, because we're Indian. And he said, well, who cares? Let's try something else, let's do something different. And started introducing the Moroccan food at the market, which really took off, and we did that successfully for a good 3 years. And during this time, the city of Schenectady was growing, looking for new businesses and something that was going to be different for our downtown community. So the city approached us and said, hey, if you guys are interested in possibly having a brick and mortar store, we'll help you guys out with this. So that's how 6 years ago, actually on this day, I realized this just a couple weeks ago, the Schenectady location opened. And ever since then, we've just kind of kept going. And as the city of Schenectady has been growing, we've been growing as well. And when we first opened, I had a 10-month-old daughter. When the restaurant opened, I had a 10-month-old daughter. And I just found out I was pregnant with my second child. And people thought I was insane to open a restaurant with 2 toddlers. But, I don't believe in perfect timing, and I don't believe in waiting for that perfect moment, because if I just kept waiting, I'd probably never get anything done. So my personal mantra in life has always been to to do what you need to do, and that you have to put your mind over what the matter is. So doing that, and just by keeping going and by having all this community support that we did get, having a small restaurant, the people in the community came out, helped us refurbish this building that had been shut down for years and years and years. In fact, many people told us it's a cursed building for a restaurant, don't do it, it's been 60 years, nothing works here, and we didn't believe it. And we said, well, the least we'll do is at least be able to pay rent and have a place. So we got into this building, and now it's been 6 years. So a year after Schenectady opened, we were also able to launch a successful line of cooking sauces, which now sells all over the Northeast region. And last year, we opened our second location in Troy, another city that's seen a tremendous amount of resurgence and just revitalization, and being part of that community has been really amazing for us. And it's not that I knew that we were going to be successful, but I knew that failure was not an option for us. So, just looking at what is the best way to problem solve and get to the next point is what we've been doing for the past few years. So the next project that we're working on, also again in downtown Schenectady, in a building that has been shut down for nearly 70 years, is being rehabbed into 11 gorgeous apartments. The first floor is going to house the first ever Moroccan hammam in our region, which is a spa. And I don't necessarily know anything about running a spa, but I've spent thousands of hours in one, so how hard could it be, right? So I think that's an exciting time for us as a business, and also for Schenectady, as the changes in what's happening and the tremendous amount of growth that we have seen there. And once Schenectady was known as Electric City, but now has really become a food destination and a culinary destination, and has been voted as such in the entire upstate region of New York. So I'm looking forward to this continued relationship with Schenectady. And often people ask me, why Schenectady? Why are you not in Saratoga or New York City or anywhere else? And my response is, why not, right? I've had an intimate relationship with Schenectady for nearly 25 years. First, because my parents chose it for me. The second time, because my doctor chose it for me. And the third time, because really I am choosing it for myself. And Schenectady was really, really helpful in putting us on the map, so to speak. This tiny little Moroccan restaurant that could be run by an Indian and Pakistani immigrant, called Tara Kitchen, and my name's not Tara. So we make a very confusing branding story. Sometimes people think I'm in the Federal Protection Program. What is going on? Well, I like the mystery. So I think I'd like to give back to Schenectady someday because of all the stuff that she's given to us, and hopefully someday soon, Wikipedia will say, Schenectady, home of Thomas Edison, Pat Riley, and Aneesa Waheed. Thank you.